Hello and welcome to a session on decision making in XAT. The decision making section is a much discussed one. It is believed that it doesn't have a structured approach. Arriving at the correct answer is not possible, and that option elimination is not a very clear-cut patterned approach. Not really. There is indeed a structured approach to this. If only if we understand the purpose behind decision-making questions, as well as learn how to approach these questions in a very structured manner, understand the method involved in approaching these questions, it indeed becomes a very structured approach to solving these questions. These questions are meant to test an aspirant's business acumen and his ability to take the right decisions professionally. They expect an understanding of basic business terms and practices followed in order to maximize returns of investment. They expect a student to be aware of the utilitarian approach, which is doing greatest benefit with least harm. They expect a student to be aware of the rights of people or the various stakeholders involved to be honored in the process of problem solving or decision taking. They also expect that a student be aware of the essential virtues required to function ethically in the modern world, which also means that we strive towards the betterment of humanity. With these aspects in mind, let's look at what kinds of questions appear. These questions are typically caselets which can have 1, 2, 3, 4 or even 5 questions based on them. These caselets are very often real-life business scenarios that expect a decision to be taken with regard to the revenues of the organization or with regard to the people or resources of the organization. Sometimes these caselets involve ethical dilemmas or ethical decisions to be taken with regard to individuals. You know, sometimes it can be just an individual's decision, an individual's dilemma. It can even sometimes be an organization's ethical decision with regard to society, with regard to the community, etc. Let's look at what has been the weightage of decision-making section in the last 5 years of the XAT. XAT 2013 had 24 questions of decision-making. Remember that this section also involves a couple of LR sets. 2014 also had 24 questions of the decision-making section. 2015, on the other hand, had 23 questions, so did 2016. Of the 23 questions of 2016, there were about 2 AR sets, followed by about 15 business questions or questions based on business scenarios, and about 3 ethical questions. 2017 saw 21 questions of decision making, about 2 being LR sets carrying 6 questions, about 8 being miscellaneous decision making sets, about 5 being business decision making sets, and 3 involving ethics. Let's look at how to approach these questions. When you're given a caselet, it's important for us to read the caselet in great detail. Identifying the facts of the case is the first step here. Read the case carefully. It could be as lengthy as an RC at times, but I need to read the case carefully in order to identify the facts of the case. Now, this is situational analysis. Let me then move on to identifying the stakeholders involved in the case. Who are the various stakeholders? Who are the groups involved? For example, if I'm talking of an organization, there is the management involved, there are the employees at different levels, there are the customers involved. These are the three stakeholder groups. I will need to identify the stakeholders because the problem very often could be connected with one of the stakeholders. So step 3 is identifying the problem. What exactly is the problem of the case? Problem definition. In XAT decision-making cases, the question captures the problem very often. So the problem is situated in the question. I therefore need to read the question very carefully because the question contains my problem. Now, once the problem is defined, we go on to identify the solution. There can be several solutions, but remember, there is an optimal solution. The optimal solution has to do with, remember, the utilitarian approach, doing greatest benefit with least harm. So, how do I arrive at the optimal solution? Which is, how do I arrive at the correct option to the question, that which solves the problem of the question? I'll have to assess the practical feasibility of all options. 1. 2. Understand the benefits and harm that each action would bring about and what would lead to best overall consequences. Eliminate illegal, immoral, or loss-making alternatives. In other words, the optimal solution is that which would bring maximum benefit with least harm. In order to understand this approach, apply this approach, we need to look at a few past questions. Let's take a question from XAT 2017. The first question that we're going to deal with is a business case. Let's have the question on your screens. Please read the question on your screens. Genius Consulting is a boutique consulting firm started by Shirish, Balram, Rahman, and Xavier, 4 friends from a premier business school. They committed themselves to abide by 2 principles. A, not to indulge in anything unethical, and B, share earnings equally. Genius Consulting could not get a significant project till the following year when they managed a big one after Rahman's father referred their firm to his top management. Convinced of the team's talent following an impressive presentation, the top management awarded them the project, even though 6 other referred teams made presentations. The day following the presentation, they met to decide the way forward for the organization. Which of the following choices would be the most appropriate for Genius Consulting? Now, the question asks us to decide what should be their future course of action. What are the facts of the case? You have the consulting firm begun by 4 friends from a premier business school. The 2 principles that they decide to abide by are A, not to indulge in anything unethical, and B, share earnings equally. Rahman's father referred their firm to his top management when they did not get a significant project till the following year. But the team did make an impressive presentation, and the top management awarded them the project even though 6 other referred teams made presentations. These are the facts of the case. So what should be the right course of action for Genius Consulting? A, as this project violates both their principles, Genius Consulting should not take up the project. The firm has not got a significant project for a year. This is therefore a question of their survival. Not taking up the project will mean that their very survival is threatened. Yes, taking up the project might go against principle 1. Nevertheless, it's a question of survival. Option B, due to the violation of the first principle, Genius Consulting should not take up this project. Once again, yes, it violates their first principle, but remember, the utilitarian approach talks of the greatest benefit with the least harm. The only aspect that has been violated here is their decision to remain absolutely ethical. But compare that with their survival. Their survival as a firm is more important. So yes, B is also eliminated. Look at option C. They should take up the project. Further, since Rahman had agreed to equal sharing, he is not entitled to finder's fee. Though principle 1 has been violated slightly, principle 2 is not violated here. Sharing earnings equally is what they will abide by. This one seems very much like the right course of action. Let's also examine the other two options. Option D, they should take up the project as the referral helped them survive. Rahman should be paid finder's fee. While the first part is right, why should they necessarily also violate the second principle they can very well abide by? Option E, they should take up the project, but in order not to violate the principles, Rahman can be paid finder's fee this year and an equal amount be deducted from his compensation the next year. Like D, this option also violates principle B and therefore is not the right one, since we've considered the benefits and the harm caused by all of these options. Option C is the best as far as their survival and success as a firm is concerned. It does not violate principle B and thus they are able to remain true to their principles. Let's examine another question which is more on the lines of an organization's commitment to society or to the community around it. Please read the question on your screens. A college campus with a population of around 2,000, of whom 200 were children, 1,200 people between 15 and 45 years, 500 people between 45 and 65, and around 100 people more than 65 years of age. The campus has 2 big gates opening out to the city. There are 400 cars and 500 motorbikes inside the campus. The residents relied on these vehicles to visit the city located 10 kilometers away. Now, with land within the campus becoming scarce, the chief administrator found the growing demand for parking lot difficult to handle. The faculty, staff, and students wanted increased parking space. In the past 6 years, the parking requirement on campus had doubled. The CA found it inappropriate to construct parking lots from the students' fee, even though those with vehicles may not complain about it. Besides creating parking problems, the CA felt that these vehicles added to the pollution and made residents less responsible towards each other. The risk to the children and the elderly because of overspeeding was menacing. Therefore, the CA wanted to reduce the number of vehicles in the campus. Many faculty members, students, and staff members, however, felt that the demand for more parking space was natural as vehicles were required to the market, railway station, airport, and interstate bus terminal, all located in the city. They also told the CA that the elderly, sick, and the toddlers relied only on these vehicles. After listening to all stakeholders, the CA wanted to solve these problems while ensuring the campus remained responsible and green. What are the details of this case? About 2,000 people living on a college campus, including children and elderly. 400 cars and 500 motorbikes parked inside the campus. The residents of the campus relied on these vehicles to visit the city that is located 10 kilometers away. There is now a growing demand for parking lot with land within the campus becoming scarce. The CA of the campus is looking to manage this parking problem. A lot of vehicles made the residents less responsible towards each other. It also added to the pollution. The risk of overspeeding was menacing. He wanted to ensure that all of these things were catered to while the campus remained responsible and green. Now, let's look at question 1. Which of the following actions would best satisfy all the stakeholders within the campus? Who are the stakeholders here? The residents, the people who need parking space, and 3, the environment or keeping the environment clean. Look at option A. Levy extra fee on students to construct additional parking lots inside the campus. Students should pay for upkeep of the campus. This is not an option that would make the students happy. Moreover, a parking lot inside the campus might further affect the campus and its environment. Look at option B. Let all vehicles be parked in a college-managed space outside the campus, while 2 battery-operated vehicles handle exigencies inside the campus. Now this looks like it would make all stakeholders happy. There is a parking space managed by the college. It is located outside the campus, which therefore does not affect the greenery of the campus. There are also 2 battery-operated vehicles to handle exigencies for the residents of the campus. Looks like a good option. C. Bring all stakeholders to the discussion table. While discussion seems like a practical idea, it may not necessarily lead to a solution. There could be further confrontations and may lead to more difficulties. It might also delay the solution to the problem. Option D. To reduce carbon footprints, only pooled vehicles should be allowed to operate inside the campus. Pooled vehicles, yes, but what about those residents who may need vehicles for certain emergencies? This may not satisfy the residents. This might also make students unhappy because pooled vehicles are allowed and each one is not allowed to bring his individual vehicle. E. Charge significant fee from any vehicle entering or leaving the campus. Any vehicle entering or leaving the campus, this may upset visitors as well as students who come to the campus on a regular basis. Also, what about the campus and its environment and the risk to the residents of the campus? Considering all these options and how much all of these options satisfy the 3 stakeholders and their needs, option B is the best option. So yes, that's our answer. Let's look at the next question. Which of the following would be the best option to increase revenue, decrease carbon footprint, and still satisfy all the stakeholders in the campus? Now, what are the details here? Increase revenue, decrease carbon footprint, and still satisfy all the stakeholders in the campus. Look at option A. Make substantial collection from all vehicles entering or leaving campus and construct a parking lot outside the campus. A parking lot satisfies the parking need. Substantial collection from vehicles entering or leaving campus satisfies the need to increase revenue. And decreasing carbon footprint is taken care of by the parking lot outside the campus. Look at option B. Levy extra fee on the students and build extra parking lots inside the campus. Inside the campus, which again affects the environment, so carbon footprint is not satisfied. Levying extra fee on the students, what about those students who come without vehicles? They may not be happy about this. Look at option C. Bring all stakeholders to the table and let them build consensus. Once again, while consensus building is always a very suitable one, our particular question requires that certain criteria be fulfilled. Building consensus may end up taking a very long time, a satisfactory solution may not be arrived at. Let's look at option D. To reduce the carbon footprint, only pooled vehicles be permitted on campus. Now obviously the residents are going to be affected by it. The carbon footprint is reduced, but there is no revenue earned. And remember, one of the details of our question is that revenue be earned. Option E, let all vehicles be parked in a managed space outside the campus, while battery operated vehicles parked at the two gates can be used inside the campus. Parking lot managed, but battery operated vehicles inside the campus. Yes, the greenery aspect is satisfied here, but what about revenue? And what about those residents who are not really happy with the battery operated vehicles and who may need their own vehicles to travel to far distances? So yes, E again does not satisfy all the criteria of the given question. The best answer here is option A. Here is a question from XAT 2016. This is a question that has to do with a business decision. Purushottam Bhatnagar owns and operates a sweet shop, Puru and Sons. He is about 60 years old and is eager to hand over the business to his sons, Ratan and Pramod. He, however, fears that his sons, fresh from college, may not understand the tricks of the trade. So what is the situation? Purushottam, who's managed his business for a long time, is handing over his business to his sons, but is concerned that his sons may not understand the tricks of the trade and therefore may mismanage his business. Look at the first question. Purushottam sends a batch of sweets to the police station across the street every day. Ratan construed it as a bribe and wanted to stop this practice. Now, the question says, which of the following arguments, if true, would best convince Ratan not to give up this practice? So, we will have to justify that the action is not a bribe because Ratan construes it as bribe and wants to stop this practice. Look at option A. In the last 3 years, 3 attempts to burgle Puru and Sons were effectively foiled by the police. Therefore, it is a bribe. If the police have effectively foiled 3 attempts to burgle this sweet shop, then this is a bribe being given to them to seek the favor of protection from the police. B. Each policeman receives only 2 pieces of sweet, too small to be considered a bribe. But yes, there is no reason here as to why it is not a bribe. It is too small to be considered a bribe, but it does not justify as to why it is not a bribe. And I need an option that justifies that the action is not a bribe. Option C. The police in return sent 2 policemen in mufti to mingle with the customers during rush hours to prevent pickpockets. Therefore, a bribe. The police are returning the favor. Therefore, a bribe. Option D. Every day, Purushottam also sends a batch of sweets to the school next to the station, an orphanage nearby, and the temple at the end of the street. It is not just the police that Purushottam gives sweets to on an everyday basis. He also gives sweets to the school, to an orphanage, and to the temple. In other words, this is not a bribe, but a humanitarian or a communitarian, a social welfare measure by Purushottam, who does this on an everyday basis. Now, this rationale should justify to Ratan that this action is not a bribe and therefore he should not give up this practice. Option E, Purushottam's competitor Uttam Purush, who runs a sweet shop in the same street, and his neighbor Mahapurush, who runs a samosa stall, both do similar things every day. Just because a competitor does something is no reason why it is necessarily right and why I should necessarily do it. Does not justify why the action is not a bribe or why Ratan should give up this practice. Purushottam's eldest son discovered that the shop repackaged sweets that were close to expiry and sold them at a discount under different names. These sweets usually get sold very fast, but his son was concerned about the possible consequences of this practice. Purushottam was thinking of the following arguments to convince his son. 1. These sweets are consumed the same day and therefore there is no cause for worry. Looks like a good argument to convince his son. The son is concerned about the consequences of this practice. If the sweets are not harmful and cause no worry, then it should be a good enough argument to convince him. Option 2, reduced prices give enough indication about the sweets to the customers. There is an assumption involved here that the customers are well aware that the reduced prices are equal to some damaged or defect. Not necessarily. Third, these products are preferred by those who cannot afford full price, and in a way, this is a service done to them. But still, the sweets could be harmful. That is, even if it's a service that I'm doing to them, what about the harm aspect of the sweets? Option 4. In the past 30 years, not a single person has reported ill because of consumption of these sweets. If my concern is over the consequences of the repackaged sweets, then option 4, which tells me that in the past 30 years, there has not been a single complaint about the consumption of these sweets, seems like a good enough argument to convince the son that the practice is not a dangerous or harmful one. Option 5, repackaging and selling sweets is a common practice. Every common practice is not necessarily the right practice. So, my answer here would be option B, 1 and 4. Both these statements are strong arguments to convince the son. Purushottam's younger son Pramod discovered that 10% of their customers, whom Purushottam called privileged customers, purchased sweets at prices fixed 10 years ago, which is significantly lower than the current prices. Purushottam told him, "This 10% are my core and loyal customers with whom I have personal connect, and therefore they deserve this privilege." Pramod refuted his father's argument, citing the following information. 1. These customers form the top 20% of the income bracket of the city. 2. These customers frequently purchased from other sweet shops at market prices. 3. None of them recognizes and greets Purushottam at the shop or anywhere else. 4. None of them was present at Pramod's marriage. And 5. These customers actually buy sweets at Puru and Sons for others not part of the core and loyal customer group. Which of the following combination of the above will most likely convince Purushottam to charge market price to all? We need to convince Purushottam that the privileged customers are not to be given a 10% discount. Of the given statements by Pramod, there are objective and subjective details. What are those subjective details? 3 and 4, none of them recognizes and greets Purushottam at the shop or at anywhere else, and none of them was present at Pramod's marriage. Both of these are subjective answers. Remember, we are looking at the loyalty aspect of these customers. They are being rewarded for their loyalty to the sweet shop. 3 and 4 are not necessarily part of the loyalty aspect of a customer. These are actions that are connected with a friendship or friendliness. Likewise, option 1, just because they are well off and can afford to buy sweets at their regular prices doesn't necessarily mean I cannot give them a discount. But options 2 and 5, that they are also customers who frequently go to other sweet shops. In other words, they are not just my customers. So my sense of loyalty is affected here. And 5, these customers actually buy sweets at Puru and Sons for others not part of the core and loyal customer group. Again affects my loyalty. I offer them sweets believing that they like the quality of the sweets sold at this shop. But if they are buying or availing the 10% discount so that the sweets can be given to somebody else, they are misusing the reward for loyalty that I am giving them. Most likely 2 and 5 is what will convince Purushottam to charge market price to all. So, understand the approach to solving decision-making questions. Read the facts of the case very clearly, identify the stakeholders involved, identify the problem of the case, which is often captured in the question. Read the details of the question carefully. What is the expectation of the question? Very often there are parameters or standards presented by the question that the option needs to fulfill. That's what we mean by fulfilling the needs of all stakeholders. Who is the stakeholder being mentioned or referred to in the given option? Is the question presented from the point of view of 1 or 2 stakeholders? Examine all of these. Examine every option vis-a-vis the question and look at which one fulfills all the expectations of the question. In other words, the option that does the maximum benefit with least harm. Remember, the best way of mastering decision making is familiarizing yourself with many such questions, which is best done by solving a number of past XAT questions, identifying what the correct answer is and how it has been arrived at. Do solve a lot of such questions. Happy solving decision-making questions, and thank you for having watched this video.